Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. And I know that I have had so many opportunities, even in the last 24 hours since I talked to you last, to just find that place to go. You know what, God? I just trust you've got me. I'm just going to have to trust you because I ain't got the situation under control. I ain't got my heart under control. I ain't got my thoughts under control. I just have to trust that you have given me your peace, just like you promised. So we always have those opportunities. That's how I began to see my challenges is how can I get back to just trusting him for peace from here? Because my thoughts start here and go, everywhere. And then it's like, bring them all back. Come back over here. Let's go back to God's peace, right? So it's a crazy thing in my brain. And I can't even tell you where it all has been this morning. I'll spare you the boring details too, right? But we know our minds can travel. So this week, we are talking about uh, changes and ends and beginnings. Yesterday, we talked about the children of Israel, and even though they came out of slavery, the end of slavery and the beginning of learning to walk with God. And it was actually a beautiful story, even though they threw some kinks along the way, but God never abandoned them. That's a really cool thing. And he's not going to abandon us either. Even when I have crazy thoughts, he didn't go, well, I just can't. Right? He sure could, but he's like, no, I'll take you. He's probably, the cool thing is that even though this crazy brain runs so fast in so many crazy directions with just one phrase or just one thought, he's always a step ahead. Now that's something amazing. I'll tell you that right now. So today we're going to talk about a little known character. He's probably not one of the most popular characters because we don't know a lot about him, but his name is Mephibosheth. We actually had a goat born with, and he was lame in his legs, and we named him Mephibosheth because Mephibosheth, this is the unique character about Mephibosheth in 2 Samuel chapter 9, is he was lame. He was actually Jonathan's son, who was Saul, who was a king before David, the Saul who chased David all those years. Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, and when Saul and Jonathan were killed, one of their servants, Ziba, grabbed, or I guess it was his nurse, grabbed him and ran with him to go into hiding, and she tripped and he became lame in his feet. Now, what that means, I don't know. I know he has a son later. We don't have anything else about Mephibosheth except that he was crippled in his feet, and probably was a break or something. It probably could have been fixed these days. They could have probably said it, put a cast on it, but they didn't know that back then, right? So he was lame. That's about all we know is he's Jonathan's son and he's lame. David comes to this place where he's just missing Jonathan, his good friend, and he goes, isn't there somebody that I can show kindness to that is from the house of Jonathan? I miss Jonathan. Can't I bless somebody from his household? And Ziba came and said, well, Jonathan's son Mephibosheth is living over, and he has, he has servants, and we're taking care of the land for him because we were Saul's servants, and Mephibosheth is over there. And David said, bring him here. He didn't care that he was lame. He didn't care that he was the son of the man, the grandson of the man who chased him all those years and had him hiding out in caves and running for his life, living in all kinds of crazy places during those years. He didn't care. He said, bring him. And he said, from now on, Mephibosheth, you eat at my table. Mephibosheth didn't necessarily deserve it, but he didn't not deserve it either. He didn't deserve to be mistreated, right? But David sought him out. And so as I was thinking, and so it was the end of Mephibosheth's hiding, basically, and now he's welcome at the king's table. Plus, he got all the land restored to him that had been Saul's and Jonathan's. So he got everything was restored, and he doesn't even have to worry about anything because he's eating at the king's table. What an amazing end of beginning, right? He got all of Saul's land back. Everything was restored. What a beautiful picture of restoration. Whether he deserved it or not is irrelevant. The point is the king went after him and said, come eat at my table. So I was thinking about that, and I thought that's a really cool end and beginning, a whole new life before Mephibosheth now, right? His whole life changed in that day. His whole life changed because David said, I'm going to take care of you. And as I was reading it this morning and thinking about it again before coming live here, I was live in there too, but just clicking live video, right? Here, I thought, isn't that such a picture of God and us? Sometimes we're lame in our walk. Okay, maybe you're not, but I'm lame in my walk. Sometimes I don't do things right. Sometimes I mess up. I trip on stupid stuff. I do dumb stuff. I make mistakes. I do things wrong. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. And so sometimes our walk is messed up. Mephibosheth was lame. David didn't say, and he could have. He didn't say, well, he can't eat at my table because he's lame. But you can bring him in the back of the castle, in the back of the palace, and put him back there and make him a little meal. You can have the leftovers. No, he brought him right up to his table. Mephibosheth sits at my table. And that's what God does for us. Even if our walk is messed up, even if we don't do everything just right, God still says, come on and eat at my table. As a matter of fact, in Psalm 23, we have this picture of the king. And David even wrote this same King David wrote that God prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And see, we don't have physical enemies. David had physical enemies. Saul was actually, Mephibosheth's grandfather was actually David's physical enemy. But we don't have that physical enemy chasing us, right? But what we do have is we have doubts. We have fear. We have unbelief. We have difficult circumstances, these enemies of our soul that are always trying to interrupt our trust of God. That's what all that's about. Is it going to make us not trust God? Are we going to trust ourselves? Are we going to trust somebody else more? Are we going to read that book? I like to read, but are we going to trust what we saw in that book? Or are we going to trust what we've read in this book? It's always a question. Those are our enemies. But right in the middle of our enemies, God prepares a table for us. And at that table, there's grace enough for everything. There's mercy enough for the day. There's peace enough for everything. There's love. There's joy. There's patience. There's kindness. There's goodness. God is good. God is love. And he is patient with us. And he sets us at that table, no matter if our walk is messed up, no matter if we're battling with enemies we can or can't see, whether that's, death of a vision, we are living a dreamless life. We have no aspirations anymore. Maybe we feel defeated. Maybe we feel fearful. Maybe we feel full of doubt. He still spreads that table for us in the presence of our enemies and says, come on and eat at my table. Isn't this a beautiful story of restoration? David didn't owe Mephibosheth anything. He didn't have to do anything. But out of his just kindness of his heart, he said, I want to show kindness to Jonathan's people. Are there any people left? And God has that same compassion that he's compelled to do the same for us. Isn't there anybody that's going to trust me today? Come on and eat at my table today. Come over to my house. Come stay with me for a while. There's grace, abundant grace. There's abundant mercy. There's my loving kindness is forever. Just come eat at my table. I don't care if you're afraid. I don't care if you doubt. I don't care if you're worried about 999 million things on your plate today. Just come eat at my table. Be part of my household. What an invitation. And we have that invitation. It's an ongoing, open invitation. And we don't even have to reserve it, right? It's an ongoing invitation. All we have to do is accept. And he spreads it before us, right in the presence of our enemies, no matter what our enemies look like, whether they have flesh and blood or not, or whether they're all in our head and we're battling things that don't even exist, or whether we're trying to sort through all the mysteries of life, or no matter what. There's no stipulation. David didn't go, well, he's lame. He can't come. Never mind. No, he didn't. He said, you eat at my table all the time. It says, as for Mephibosheth, said the king, King David, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons. That's the same thing God tells us. Eat at my table. There's peace for all. There's grace for all. There's mercy for all. There's loving kindness for all. There's patience for all. Just come eat. Now, Mephibosheth could have said, I don't want to eat at your table. He didn't have to go eat there. He didn't have to. There's always a choice. But Mephibosheth, we know, accepted the king's invite. And he began to just eat. It said, so Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, where he ate continually at the king's table, even though he was lame in both his feet. He had problems, but he got an invite and a place set at the table. We have problems, but our king is inviting us today to sit at his table. Just sit at my table. I know you got problems. I know you got flaws. I know you got difficulties. I know you got crazy thoughts. I know you got stuff going on, but just sit at my table. Let me provide for you. And let's start with peace. Let's start with new mercies this morning. Let's start with grace, because he's got enough grace. He's going to restore everything the enemy tried to steal. He is a God of restoration. He's a God of peace and hope, and we can trust him today. So will you take the invite to come sit at his table today? Sit down, make yourself at home, enjoy yourself, because that's when we can peace out. Peace out. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow.